A 17-year-old teenager in Virginia just got sentenced to 11 years in prison because of his support of ISIS. Now, he ran a pro-ISIS Twitter account, and he also helped one of his friends flee the United States to go to Syria in order to be part of ISIS. According to the Washington Post, Amin, Ali Amin is his name, pleaded guilty in June to conspiring to provide material support to terrorists, tweeted approximately 7,000 times from his apparently pro-ISIS account, which had more than 4,000 followers and has since been suspended. He also introduced his friend Reza to ISIS members online and helped the 18-year-old travel to join the militia in Syria. Now, prosecutors who described Amin as a prolific, sophisticated Islamic State supporter sought the maximum sentence of 15 years, but his defense attorneys asked for a 6-year, 3-month sentence. In the end, he got 11 years. So I guess the question is this sentence okay, considering what he did?
I don't think there's enough information in here. If this is all, I mean, he better have done some terrible, terrible things. It felt really wrong to me when I read it.
Yeah, look, God damn it, they put us in this awkward spot, right? Where this guy is clearly pro-ISIS, so, okay, we hate him. We hate him. Are you happy? We hate him, okay? And I wish he hadn't done any of that. And what he did was wrong. The only question is, how much are we going to punish someone for talking? I mean, it's
well,
like,
it depends on what is and isn't protected by the First Amendment. So him actually convincing his friend and helping him get to Syria, to me, that was the major crime. Having a Twitter account that supports ISIS, I mean, is that illegal? I guess that's the question. And by support, I mean saying things that are supportive of ISIS, right?
I think if you incite violence, that's a crime.
Of
right?
course.
So that's I think it could be a tough line to draw on where you incite violence. I would find someone supporting ISIS loathsome, but the KKK is loathsome.
That's exactly right.
And we allow them to speak, right?
Yes.
We allow them to
Nazis in America.
Yeah,
you can't ban Nazis.
We allow the Nazis to say, goddamn Jews, this, and that.
They march in Skokie, Illinois. What are you talking about?
We allow the KKK to say that blacks are inferior race and yada, yada, yada. So, it's interesting because we just did a case earlier this week of that 18-year-old girl who talked her boyfriend into committing suicide.
Right.
Now, that was immediate, and you could see it. Like, there's no question she talked him into suicide based on the facts we've seen here. Obviously, there's a question when it comes to court. They'll have to prove it, right? But he's dead, right? And she got charged with involuntary manslaughter. I would be shocked if she got the same number of years as this kid, right? And what he's doing is a lot more general, right? Hey, why don't you go over to Syria? Hey, I like ISIS, as opposed to, you should kill yourself, and you should kill yourself right now. Get back in the car that's filled with carbon monoxide to make sure you die, right? Yeah. So I think she should get a lot more time than him, but they're not going to see it that way. We say ISIS, their heads explode, and this guy's...
Well, this guy, again, the key part here is material support.
Material support.
Like, he raised money. Like, you can't raise money.
Oh, okay. All right. That's real. That's definitely real. Yeah.
So, and he did plead guilty.
Yes. So can I give you guys that?
Yes.
All right. So during court, here's what he had to say. He said, "I made my decisions, and I am prepared to bear the fullest consequences."
Remember, he's 17. I mean, what a jackass, right?
Yeah.
So at 17, you think you're ready for all the consequences, and then he'll be like 23, and he'll be like, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've been in prison for 6 years. What the hell did I do?
He's probably thinking
I thought I was
that
a tough guy. I was a fucking idiot." But I'm not excusing it. You're raising money for ISIS. You're going to go away, and you should go away, right? And so, just like this whole thing that he's a criminal mastermind, he's 17.
And he convinced an 18-year-old. Like, it's not that hard.
It's because so ISIS is on the terrorist list, and that's why you can't. If the government says these people are terrorists, we can't give them any material support. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
that's
if you raise money for them, that I'm fine with.
So they just declare someone, but they have to put them on the terrorist list, and if they're on the terrorist list officially, then that's a crime.
Something like that. Yeah, probably.
But KKK's not on the terrorist list.
No, funny enough, they're not.
Who?
KKK.
That's a good point.
How about the American Nazis? They're not on the terrorist list?
The reason they're not on the list is because they're not committing violent terrorist acts right now that we know of, right? If so, there was the League of the South is a well-known racist group. If the League of the South was still lynching people, right, there's an argument to be made that they would be on the terrorist list. My guess is they wouldn't put him on the list because, I mean, they said Dylan Roof's not a terrorist. He went in and shot 9 people because of political reasons. He stated what his political reasons were. He shot him based on their race, and they're like, nope, not a terrorist, right? So this kid's a terrorist. He didn't kill anybody, right? But Dylan Roof is not a terrorist. So is there some double standard? Oh, of course there's a double standard, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't put somebody away for raising money for somebody we put on a terrorist list. And I hear you, Jimmy. We now call all of our enemies terrorists. But don't give any money to anyone we put on a terrorist list, no matter how. Like, if you could find one case where you think it's an injustice, I don't care. Don't give them money. Fight that in other ways.
Okay. CBS News says that he sent out those 7,000 tweets that Anna mentioned, to develop financial support for the Islamic State, and he instructed followers on how to make anonymous donations to the Islamic State using Bitcoin.
The double standard always drives me crazy. So Dylan Roof's not a terrorist,
right.
You know, but you know. We turn around, and anyone who does anything vaguely, you know, this guy didn't kill 9 people, right? He did things that were bad, but he didn't kill 9 people. But he's a terrorist.
The frustrating thing.
So Jimmy, when you get frustrated with the word terrorist, that's what I hear you on.
Yeah.
Because like if they were even-handed about it, and they, then you say, okay, then I understand what you're saying. Ultimately, Dylan Roof will get more years than this kid. Let's not be confused about that.
Because that's the critical thing is that they use the terrorist part when they need to use the terrorist part. They don't need to for Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof is going to get 9 life sentences if he doesn't get executed in South Carolina. It doesn't matter whether they call him a terrorist. He's never getting out of prison.
Culturally, it does.
It does matter a little bit because it's of perceptions.
Right, but mostly it's being used as a prosecutorial tool. They need this guy to get him on terrorism because otherwise he's just raising money for an organization, which is not a crime. There's no other thing they can get him with other than using terrorism to get him.
I think that's a really good point. So there's the prosecutorial part of it, but there's also the media perception and the way the media covers stories like this, right? So even if someone hasn't been charged with terrorism yet, the media will report a Muslim individual as a terrorist before those charges are even brought up. But when you have someone like Dylan Roof, that person isn't ever referred to as a domestic terrorist. And the reason why it's important to bring things like that up is because it does lead to certain perceptions towards certain groups of people. Yep. So that's why there's so much hatred toward the Muslim community in America right now. That's why you have assholes on the internet that will group every single Muslim together with terrorists, even though, of course, there are gradations within every group of people.
So you guys would somehow feel better if Dylan Roof, because I think that's a silly argument, but you'd feel better if Dylan Roof were called a terrorist.
No, Ben, let me frame it in a different way. Not using terrorists, not using Muslim. So here's where the double standards are relevant in terms of perception and how society acts. Dylan Roof kills 9 people in the church. He comes in, the judge says, let's talk about forgiveness. Right? So the black guy who just shot the 2 poor people live on air, right, in Virginia, did anybody talk about forgiveness? Nobody talked about forgiveness, right? He's a monster, and,
right.
Et cetera. Now, do I think they should talk about forgiveness? Of course not. That monster killed 2 people live on air. We saw it. It was gut-wrenching, right? But why are we talking about forgiveness immediately when it comes to Dylan Roof? Because the perception is the judge looks at that kid and goes, there, but for the grace of God, it goes, a kid from my neighborhood or my kid, I could see, ooh, I feel bad for his family. That's the first thing he said. I feel bad for his family. His family. I feel bad for his family.
The killer's family.
Right, but when you talk about the Zarnia brothers, you talk about the Virginia shooter, you talk about this guy, nobody feels bad for them. Nobody's talking about forgiveness. We're talking about the maximum extent of the law.
Well, another way of saying this is that we never see the humanity. We see the humanity in people who look like us who commit heinous crimes, but people who don't look like us or share our culture, we don't see the humanity in them. And this is another case of that, right? That's basically what you're saying.
I think that's exactly what it is. Because when they see this kid, they don't see a 17-year-old that could be in their family.
Right.
Because if they did, they'd be like, oh, my nephew, my son, they're such knuckles, and 17-year-old is so stupid. Yeah. Why did you do this? Then you might think like, hey, man, we can't have this. I got to send this guy to prison, but I'm going to take 15 years of his life. But if you don't see him as fully human, or not just even fully human, but you don't relate to him, right? You just don't relate to him. You don't see him as somebody that could be part of your community, right? It's normal. It's natural. It's human nature. That's why we talk about it, so we can get beyond it. And so they don't see him as one of them. They see him as not as one of us. They see him as one of them. So one of them, ooh, they're dangerous. They're the other. They're dangerous. Yes. We got to make sure we lock them away for as long as we can.